Hey guys, and welcome back to the Get a Life podcast. As usual, it's Kevin, and today I'm joined by Bish.
Hey, what's up, guys?
It's been a while, but we are recording this episode from quarantine, and I'm actually quite happy that out of all the episodes recording in quarantine, it's this one, because today we're covering a comedy. It's Good Luck Girl on Funimation.
Great show.
So before we get into the discussion, though, as usual, there's our little pre-discussion disclaimer.
For you new folks, Get Life Podcast, Kunai is a monthly anime discussion podcast under the Get a Life group. Due to the nature of the discussion, we can't avoid spoilers of the show to be discussed. For those shows that are based off existing pieces of work, whether it's manga, light novel, games, or any other media form, we're not going to be covering the source material for those. We can be found on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to recommend a show for us to watch and make an episode of Kunai, send in your suggestion on our Twitter page at Get Life Podcast, or just leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. If you want to support what we do here, we've got our sponsors. Make sure you check out Japan Crate. Go to getlifepodcast.com/Japan Crate. Use the code GALP for $3 off. In addition, I know this show is on Funimation, but if you want to keep up to date with the anime that we're watching for Kunai, you can support us by checking out Crunchyroll. Go to getlifepodcast.com/Crunchyroll for a 14-day free trial of Crunchyroll Premium for everything anime. Check out Crunchyroll. And finally, sponsor that I really love a lot, we've got J-List. You know what J-List does. They do a lot of awesome stuff. So go to getlifepodcast.com/J-List, one word, and use the code GALP for 5% off everything in the site, including pre-orders.
Yeah, so just for folks who don't know much about Good Luck Girl, just because, it isn't exactly the most popular show out there, it is a 13-episode comedy anime that is based off of the manga of the same name that was written by Yoshiaki Sukeno, and it aired all the way back in the summer of 2012. Like, it doesn't feel like a long time, but that's 8 years ago.
That's when I got into anime 8 years ago.
I got into anime like 2012, 2013 as well, and Kunai started in 2014, so it's really been a while, honestly. It's crazy. But yeah, this was directed by Tomoyuki Kamura and Yoichi Fujita from Studio Sunrise, so yet another golden gem from Sunrise, honestly. So, I just want to know, Bish, what were your first impressions for the show? And actually, do you even remember your first impressions? Because you've watched the show like 5 times.
Yeah, I've
now,
seen.
right?
Just for people that don't know, because we've been rescheduling this episode quite a lot because of coronavirus and all of these things. Everything that's going on. I've seen the show about 5 times since when we originally wanted to record it a year ago. So I've got my original notes. So I'll just kind of give you a rundown. I'll be honest with you, Kevin, when you suggested this show, my first impressions weren't good at all, and I kind of got onto a block.
First impressions before watching it, or just the first few episodes?
Before watching it, as soon as you suggested it, I took a look at it, I saw some clips, I was like, this show is amazing. I'm gonna be very motivated to watch this show. As soon as I started watching it, however, I couldn't get myself past episode 3. I couldn't. I was trying my hardest. I was like, I really need to watch this for Kunai. And I was thinking, if I wasn't watching this for Kunai, I would have dropped the show. Mainly because of Sakura. She's such an unlikable protagonist. And And it doesn't make me feel good when she kind of treats others like subpar human beings. So I was just like, I can't continue this. What made me continue was during episode 3, Suwabuki, when they were introduced. Up until then, all the characters just seemed very obnoxious until that guy came in. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see what you're trying to say, because the first 2 episodes, if I remember correctly, it's just Ichiko and Momiji, right? Or actually, no, I think they might have introduced
the butler,
Bubby.
Bubby
was Bubby in episode 2?
I don't think so.
Or is it after Keita? But anyways, yeah, the first few episodes, if you don't like Momiji and Ichiko, it's really hard to get through, just because those first few episodes, right, you don't have a supporting cast. It's completely concentrated in those 2 characters. And yeah, effectively, Ichiko isn't the most likable, not gonna lie. Personally, I didn't mind too much because, all right, and this shouldn't come as a surprise to you.
Because she reminds you of
But
Senna. Is that why?
Yeah. Well, look. I'm a simple man. Not my fault that you have absolutely no taste, Bish, but I don't know. I actually found it to be really solid. Like, the reason why I got into the show is because, like, I don't know, I was kind of bored, I guess, right? And I was like scrolling through Funimation's list of shows. I saw the premise and I was like, oh, okay, it doesn't seem too bad. And the first episode honestly hooked me, right? Just because I loved this dynamic between Momiji and Ichiko. And also Ichiko reminded me of this character that I loved from another show, right? From Tomogachi Asukunai, right? Senna. So honestly, for me, it was a completely different experience. For me, it was just like more great shit, more comedy that I loved from that show, but just in slapstick form. It was kind of like a fusion between Sukunai and Nichijou, in a sense, with all the references and shit. It was like, I was just lapping it up.
The weird thing is, Kevin, is that both Haganai and Nichijou and all of these shows, like 2012 up until 2014, that was kind of like the era for all of these slapstick comedies and rom-coms and stuff in general. So, I mean, yeah, I can kind of see where you're at in terms of, liking the show because of that. It kind of makes a lot of sense.
But moving on, past the first episodes, what were your favorite moments, that stuck out, and just general episodes that you liked in the show?
Kevin, I know you're going to judge me, and I know you're going to call me out for it, but do you want to know what my favorite moment and my favorite episode is? Guess. I'll let you have a guess.
But just because you were acting suspicious right there, let me guess. It is when they introduce Ranmaru.
No, it's not. I didn't think you would say that. Okay. It's actually the bathhouse episode.
Yes, episode 11.
Episode 11,
yeah.
Bathhouse arc. I think it was just great. The ending, it was like my favorite arc of the show. I mean, in general, that whole arc, and then obviously the ending of the show in general. I just want to talk about episode 11 for a bit. I mean, it started...
You're going right for the...
I'm going for the jugular.
Jugular,
exactly.
Okay.
Starting off with that poem, or the ode to Oppai.
The ode! I noted that... Yo, where was it? It was Bubby and Momo singing that shit right before the intro. Oh my god, that was fucking glorious.
It was amazing. And I kind of hated Bobby as a character to begin with, but he redeemed himself with the ode to Oppai. Honest to God. I mean, to the audience, it was kind of breaking the fourth wall there, because they were showing this. They wanted to show to the audience that this is the fan service episode, for lack of better terms. But it's kind of more than that. And it was misleading, because most of the time the fan service episodes kind of don't drive the story and the plot forward. But this episode did that. I've never seen an episode, a fan service episode, that actually adds to the story of the show, which doesn't make any sense, because if you look at Haganai, if you look at Toradora, if you look at any of these rom-coms or slice of lives in general, these fan service moments don't add to the show, and it did that. And to be honest with you, a lot of people watching this might think, oh, this is a fan service episode, it's filler, let me skip it. But don't, because it was just so good. I was just impressed.
You would be so confused, yeah. It is a surprisingly good and like versatile. There we go. That's what I'd say about it. It's such a versatile episode, because there's fan service, but there's also, honestly, some of the funniest moments are in this episode. Or if that's not the case, in my opinion, the funniest moments of the show happen during the final arc. And this episode sets everything up for a very solid ending. So honestly, I can see why you like it so much. Because honestly, the last arc just knocks it out of the park.
To be honest with you, there's other reasons why I like it. And yeah, setting it up for the final arc, it was a great setup for that. But at the same time, it just feels like a very unique fan service episode, because you have a lot of fan service episodes that are on the beach or in the swimming pool, but this was in an onsen, and I rarely tend to see that now with anime.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
I thought it was like a pretty common thing, though.
I mean, yeah, Persona 4 had the onsen episode and everything like that, but it was done in such a very smart way. Like, I kind of felt like it's weird, because there's no light beams, like the censorship in anime.
Yeah,
there's no light beams to see in this episode. Everything is like a pipe coming out of the wall.
It's not like Haganai.
Exactly. It's like, it's done in such a slapstick way. It kind of reminded me of there was this old kind of comedic style of censorship that was kind of similar to the British Carry On series. There was a set of films in the UK. If you're British, you're going to understand what I'm saying. But there was this old sort of slapstick comedy that had a little bit of raunchiness called the Carry On films, and they were very sexual in nature, but they were very funny as well. And it kind of reminded me of those old films for the most part, in the way that, you know, the sensitive areas were covered, like the broken parts of the wall just happened to break in such a way that covers up Sakura or covers up Bobby. You know, there was a lot in the episode. I think at the same time it was just like, I don't know, there was a lot of comedic moments, and I think one thing in particular that comes to mind is Tsuwabuki. I can't even remember his name, but that's how I've written it down.
I just call him Keita.
Okay, Keita. So Keita's younger sister starts touching Sakura, and it's just like, part of me was thinking, how the hell could they get away with that, not censoring it? And it just like, it was just a funny thing. I was just like, how the hell? Like, it just doesn't make much sense, but in the context of the show, it just fits.
Yeah, I know. It's certainly a weird episode, honestly. Like, another moment that stuck out to me, all right, featuring Keita, and I'm surprised you didn't mention this yet, but you know, when they're entering the bathhouse, right? And Sakura's like, you know, kicking Momo, right? And he transforms. Everybody's like fucking freaking out. They're like, what the hell's going on? And Keita, right, being the poor breadwinner that he is he doesn't even give a fuck, right? He's completely unfazed. No, he's just, he's tired, but he immediately thinks, it's like, oh fuck, I could monetize this. I could get people to come see this transforming dog, right? And he does the same thing for Kama, right? So they sneak in these really funny, brilliant moments where they tie in, you know, the characters' backstories with these really funny gags, right? So really well done episode overall, honestly.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I mean, like, even looking at it kind of, even the comedy in the show kind of gives me like Gintama vibes. And I haven't seen much of Gintama, but it kind of reminds me.
Do you know why?
I'm presuming it has the same team from Gintama, right?
Same team. Yeah. On Funimation, at least. I think on the bottom of every episode, the description is from the people who brought you Gintama and Bleach.
Okay, makes sense.
So you can see that influence, all those crazy references, and I'm pretty sure, I don't remember what episode it was specifically, but I'm pretty sure there's at least one reference to Gintama.
There's a lot of Gintama references and a lot of Bleach references that I'm going to get onto in the more art style and animation segment of the podcast. Is there any other favorite episodes and moments? Because I have another one to do with the final arc of the show. But
yeah, I mean, if we're gonna be breaking down the final arc, I think we ought to talk about episode 12 and 13 as well. Because episode 11 is amazing, but I'll get into this like in more detail later. But not gonna lie, one of my favorite aspects of the final arc is kind of the main attraction, really, is the alternate Momiji.
Yes.
Right? And this wholesome relationship and this completely different dynamic. I mean, even Kumagai, right? He gets changed into a fucking teddy bear, right? Which I fucking found hilarious. But like the whole dynamic of the show that you've been used to for 10 episodes, right? Like at this point, I imagine that a good portion of the viewer base is getting kind of tired, right? It's getting kind of formulaic. You kind of know what to expect with the gags and stuff. You know, Momiji is, you know, always the troublemaker. Momo is like the masochist. Bubby's the pervert monk and shit, right? So this formula is getting kind of stale. And even episode 10, honestly, right? I found to be a really weak episode, right? Because by that point, it adds nothing to the story. It's stuff that you've seen before in the show, just rehashed in a different form. But at the end, in episode 11, 12, 13, with this, you know, let's be honest, she's practically a brand new character. It adds a lot of life into the mix. And on top of that, the end of episode 12 and 13, man, like, I'm watching this show to laugh, right? But I'm not gonna lie, 12 and 13 was like, it was really wholesome and also kind of like, I wouldn't say sad, but it's kind of like bittersweet.
Yeah, in a way.
In a way, right?
I completely agree with you, but there's a question I really wanted to ask you. Do you feel that it was a bit too late to introduce the Momiji transformation? Or do you think that it could have worked earlier on and then we could have seen more of this dynamic going on? Or do you think that this was the perfect time to introduce technically a new character into the show?
If they were going to extend it, all right, I'm not going to say no to more screen time for the alternate Momiji because I loved all the wholesome moments and stuff, right? But at most, if they wanted to give more time, because if I recall correctly, in episode 11, right, where the episode that focuses on that new dynamic, they do a lot of time skip. Right? They're just like, oh yeah, during the next few weeks they got along very well and stuff, but we don't really get to see the day-to-day shenanigans that they get into together, right? But maybe that's just because, they wanted to emphasize just how much, life got back to normal. But either way, I would have liked to see a little bit more of the alternate Momiji, but not more than an extra episode. I don't think that they should, stretch it out too much. No, I do feel that, within the 2 episodes, because honestly, she appeared at the end of episode 11, right? So in the 2 episodes that we got to see her, they did a good job. I wouldn't have complained if we got 1 more episode, but I don't think that, it was too little, honestly. I was quite happy with the amount of screen time that she was given. And also, in episode 12, I think that, again, it is the peak moment of the show for me, all right? And I kind of wish Joe was here right now because I'd love to get his reaction on this. But that moment when Momiji is cooking, right? And Ichiko is just fucking confused. She doesn't know why Momiji is being so nice. She doesn't understand that Momiji's been transformed, right? She's like, no, this is another ploy. And there's the Death Note reference. That shit fucking killed me. Oh my god. Like, I might forget a lot of the details from the show, right? Like with Ranaru and like the boring arcs and stuff. But that moment, it's kind of like a Nichijou moment because like whenever I think of the show, I think of that moment. It was just the funniest scene by far, in my opinion, in the show. And honestly, it couldn't have been done without that final arc.
Okay.
So, yeah.
To be honest with you, I kind of agree with you. Like the final arc and in general, the final 2 episodes of the show were my favorites of all time. And to be honest with you, at the beginning, I was kind of feeling a bit down when watching because it was just like, oh, it's more of the same. But if you're gonna watch this show, then I suggest sticking till that ending because it kind of redeems the whole show in general. Like the last arc for me had it all. It had great fight scenes, it had car chases, explosions, fan service, comedy. It was like a Michael Bay film in the last 3 episodes. I was like, this, bravo. Like Studio Sunrise, to me, it just looks like they had so much fun with this show and with this adaptation, and you can see it in the show. It was just like, you know what? That's how you know they like doing this. And it's just, I don't know, the themes, it works incredibly well. Like it tied to the show and the themes very well, especially the themes of internal struggle that Sakura is dealing with and, sharing her good fortune with others and making true friends that you care about, because in the end, she chose to bring back Momiji the way she was, which was a big sacrifice in itself. You wouldn't expect that from Sakura as a character. So when I saw that, I was like, shit, that changes my whole opinion on the character. So that's why I really have such an attachment to that final arc in general. But other than that, there's not many other episodes that spring to my mind, other than I think either the 2nd or the 3rd episode where the butler, is dying. I would say is a memorable moment, but I wouldn't say it's a favorite moment for me. It has to be the last arc.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
I mean, I have a few more like favorite moments sprinkled out throughout the season, but I definitely agree that by far the last arc is the best arc in the show, right? The thing is, I don't know, before that point, it's this show, yes, there's some sort of overarching story to it. You're following Ichiko's, progression as a character, her growing as a character with these new friends that she's making, right? But it feels a lot like a slapstick slice of life show, which it very much is, right? But that's not everyone's cup of tea, right? So if you're expecting like very strong characters or a very solid story, with a clear objective at the end of the season or whatever, that's not what you really get for most of the show. But personally, that last arc is so good that even if you're just kind of neutral on the first few episodes, that last arc, 11 to 13, it just makes everything worthwhile, to be completely honest. But just to quickly go over the other moments that I found noteworthy. Episode 3, just when you finally got some interest in the show after the disappointing first 2 episodes for you. That was also a noteworthy moment for me because that's when you meet Keita for the first time, right? And it's kind of like break the 4th wall to introduce him because like, oh fuck, this guy's just been sleeping for the first 2 episodes. He hasn't been doing shit. I just find him to be a very compelling character, honestly. This show I'll be honest with you, the side characters, they're kind of caricatures, right? And Keita is a caricature in a way, but he feels a lot more fleshed out than the others. I dare say out of all the side characters, he is the one that makes her grow the most, right? Because he's really the first one that makes her confront, outside of Suano, the butler, outside of her inner circle, right, of her family, that forces her to grow as a person. Right, because she's kind of confronting, the polar opposite of herself, right? Instead of this rich, well-off girl with, no family, there's this guy, right, who's, really living paycheck to paycheck, who's in high school, who's working, like, I don't know, over 40 hours a week to support, like, his 3 siblings and stuff, right? He's not materialistic at all, right? He's the opposite of her when it comes to his financial situation, and yet he seems a lot happier than she is, right? With his siblings and his family, and that forces her to reevaluate her own values, right? And to look at herself and be like, hey, maybe it is important to have people to support you, right? So it's a funny episode, but at the same time, I find that it was really striking to me, right? Because there's moments where you kind of feel bad for Sakura, and you also get to see her grow, right? Sure, there are other moments like that in the show, right? When they meet Ranmaru and stuff. But for me, this one is just, it struck a chord with me for some reason. And I think it's because Keita is just such, I don't know. It's kind of like a role model, He's like the ideal big bro in a way.
Would you agree that this would be a great place to talk about the characters of the show?
Regarding the characters, I wish I could talk that passionately about the other side characters. I'll start off with the side characters first, because I find that they do such a good job with the slapstick moments, right? With the punchlines and stuff in the show. But unfortunately, I feel that comes at the expense of the side characters. Why? Because, well, it's always the same, like, again, right? Before episode 11, it's aside from Ichiko, right, who's slowly learning bit by bit, on a personal level, what it means to share your happiness with others and stuff, and not to push people away. Those that join her entourage, like Anmaru, like Bobby, like Momo, you don't get much background on them. You get a bit of context for who they are in the episode that they're introduced in, but after that, they never change. It's always the same gangs. Momo, again, is the weird dog god that's
the masochist
into BDSM, the masochist. Bobby's the pervert. I mean, Ranmaru was supposed to be, a second Keita in a way, I guess, because she had her entire arc.
But in
right?
general, they fit certain archetypes, and they kind of merge into one at one point, and it's just
they never go beyond that. After the episode where they're introduced, they just stay in that box that they're placed in.
But my question for you is that, do you feel that this type of show would benefit from them breaking out of the archetypes? Because you mentioned the show has similar comedy to stuff like Nichiju, right? And you see those kind of archetypes in those kind of shows. So what's different between that and Nichiju?
I think the difference is, Nichiju, right? It doesn't hide what it's trying to be. Nobody says, oh yeah, I'm gonna watch Nichiju because I want to get some interesting character development, right? You're watching because you want to fucking laugh your ass off, and Nichiju does an excellent job at that. With this, I feel that Good Luck Girl is trying to handle two things at once. Again, it reminds me of our very first conversation on Hanako, actually. A lot of shows, they try to balance this comedy aspect with, a bit more drama, with a few moody scenes, right? And it's a bit hit or miss here. Why? Because when it comes to Ichiko, I find they do a phenomenal job, right? She is the main character after all, and you do see a lot of her past and see her struggle with things, but it's not even an ensemble cast, right? It's really just one character that gets any sense of development. To an extent, Momiji evolves as well, but I think that why not give a bit more development and a bit more depth to the entourage, right? Because in these shows, right, where you focus on a core group of characters, right, who are friends with each other, I don't know, I come in with a bit of an expectation to figure out who these characters are, instead of having them stay static throughout the entire season.
The thing is, you kind of see that with Ranmaru, because she's this kind of JoJo looking character, and but then she grows. You see a little bit for Ranmaru. Technically, not as much as everyone else, but it's a difficult one, Kevin, because I mentioned at the beginning that I stopped until episode 3. And to be honest with you, the characters kind of helped me get out of that. And it was the mindset. There was a certain mindset that, okay, Bish, I'm just going to turn my brain off and I'm going to enjoy the show for what it is. I didn't really tend to think about it in terms of, hey, I'm looking for a compelling story with amazing character development. That's not what I expected. And when I kind of let my guard down in that sense, I was able to continue the show. Because I wasn't going into the show expecting great character development. I was just going in the show to expect to have a laugh, maybe piss my pants a little bit.
Oh, no. Like, I understand completely. Just with the first episode, they were kind of billing it as an emotional comedy at the same time, right? With centered on Ichiko. And I was just hoping, I liked what they did with Ichiko's character so much. I was kind of hoping that some of the side characters would get the same treatment.
Fair enough.
You know?
For me, in terms of my notes for the characters, the first thing that kind of popped out to me when talking about characters is character design. And this show is very unique with the way they design characters.
Really? Okay. Wow. Okay, I'll let you finish.
Jump into it. So it's unique because, for example, a lot of anime characters don't have that weird design to them. Like, for example, you've got characters like Momiji. You've got characters like Momo, Sakura. It's weird because the palette they use is kind of, it's like dull. At the same time, there's certain colors that pop out, or they know how to shade like hair really well. There's something about it. It's weird because some characters are really plain looking, and then you have your characters that are more noteworthy, like Keita. You know, his family isn't well designed, which makes sense because you have Sakura, who's they're very plain. Yeah, very plain, but it shows their character in their design, right? The fact that they're wearing like old clothes, nothing fancy, and then you have like Sakura with her massive tits jumping around. You know what I mean? It's stuff like that, and it makes sense because they were designed like that. And the design of the characters kind of tend to reflect the personality of the character. That being said, it can be a little bit cliche at times, and I'll admit that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at you, Ranmaru.
Exactly. And even if you look at Ranmaru, you know, dressing up as a male delinquent, that kind of Yakuza type character of old, it's stuff like that. And to be honest with you, Kevin, I really disliked Momiji's initial character design. And the reason that is because of the dirty pants on her head and...
Oh, yeah.
And the stupid cast thing on her hand. And she doesn't even need it. She takes it off in an episode. So I'm like, why the fuck do you need that? Like, she literally ruined the character.
I think it's like a poverty god item.
Yeah, it probably. But at the same time, it seems so stupid. The design is so stupid, and I hated it. And if they had removed those two things, I would have loved her character design.
No, I completely disagree. If you remove what she's wearing on her head and you remove her giant syringe arm cast thing, you basically get the Momiji you see in episode 13, right? When she just transforms back into a poverty god again. She's just basically a human, you know? She doesn't have anything visually distinctive about her. She'll just be super boring, you know?
When she became a human character, that saved it for me. I was like, yes, finally, a character design that doesn't suck. No. That's my opinion.
All right. Well, it's funny that you say that because for me, other than Momiji, right, I'm not going to say that her character design is good. I'll say that it's unique. Okay? I cannot say the same thing for the other characters, and this includes Ichiko, right? They're all extremely plain. Like, honestly, I don't know, it seems so generic. Like, yeah, I get why Keita's look is really plain, but everybody looks kind of... Even, you know, Ranmaru, who's over the top, like, we've seen that cliche before in other shows, right? I feel that it's not bad necessarily, but...
It's nothing noteworthy for you.
It's nothing noteworthy. I can't really say that there's any one character in this show that has anything, you know, that's truly unique about them that hasn't been done better in other shows, right? Other, I would say, than Momiji. Again, I'm not going to say, it's like, you know, be citing Momiji as like one of the greatest character designs ever, but at least it's unique, right? The whole point of her design, Bish, why she's wearing things that you hate so much is because she's not a normal human being. That's like saying that's like saying, oh, Kamagai's design is shit because he's a fucking weird ass fucking teddy bear.
Me,
that's literally that's the entire point, right? He's supposed to have like this fucking derpy face and be weird because like they're not normal, right? And you see that with all of the gods, actually. Honestly, like the gods are the best designed characters because they have personality to them. They're fucking weird, they're wacky, right? There's like, was it the other poverty god in the maid costume with her frog teddy bear? There is the toilet god wearing the poop costume. There's the turtle river god, right? That's fucking like crawling around everywhere. Those designs have the most personality to me, right? Because they're just so silly, and honestly, it seems like the mangaka had a great time designing and drawing those characters, and I feel that that Sunrise had a great time recreating those characters as well. But when it comes to, let's say, your main character, right? She wears this like sweater, right? This school sweater the entire time almost, right? It's so plain and normal. She like kind of blends in with the other characters at the school, right? Other than her physical appearance, her clothing is super plain.
A lot of stuff occurs at the school in the show, so I can understand why that is the case.
I know, but even then, you know how like if we take shonens, right? Even if you're in a school setting, right? There's always like little ways that you can make characters stand out, right? As is the case in real Japanese schools, right? Maybe you don't wear your uniform exactly as it's supposed to. Maybe you have your shirt untucked and stuff. Just little things like that can add a little bit of personality.
Okay.
For Sakura at least. For Rannoru, they did do that, right? But I just think that they went to the other extreme and they went way overboard with it. They were like, what stereotypes are there for this like cross-dressing tough girl character who's obsessed with martial arts? They just went and checked every single item on the list, where I just couldn't take the character seriously anymore because it felt so overdone that I couldn't see the character as anything more than a cliche, honestly, than a caricature. But yeah.
Speaking of cliches, that's a reason why I don't like a lot of characters in this show. And I'm talking specifically Bobby.
Hold up, hang on. What? Dude, you literally said earlier, okay, when I was telling you that I was disappointed that the side characters weren't developed, you were like, oh, but you shouldn't expect that because it's a comedy show, Kevin.
No, that's not. Why do you sound even Canadian when you're doing that voice, Kevin? You sound like someone from like that's married to a moose. Regardless, so.
Sorry. I mean, my God, Kevin, why would you expect such a thing from side characters in a comedy show?
I appreciate
that. There we go. Is that more appropriate?
Decent British accent.
No, actually, no. I should have given you a Cockney accent.
Like,
I
Kevin,
took away your gentleman card like years ago.
Either way, but I think the reason why I say that, Kevin, is just because I get it, but I just hate Bobby. There's something about him. I just hate him. He's just so obnoxious, and the fact that he's a pervert, I don't know. It brings off. I watch this and I think, do Japanese people really think this about Westerners? Do they think this about American people? Because Bobby is technically he's American.
Specifically like black as well. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's like what are they trying to do? Like, is this how they see them? Are they using this as a joke? And I feel that he's used as a joke too much in this show.
But his entire character is a joke.
That's what I'm saying.
There's literally zero depth.
That's why I don't like him, because he just, as a character, there's nothing to him there's no meat on his character. There's just nothing there.
You could take out Bobby,
and the show would be the same.
Literally the only reason he's there is to give Ichiko like the Summon Shodai, whatever, the special like weapon thing.
The thing is, he could have got that weapon kind of come from another god in the show. They could have made him a god.
Yeah,
that would have been badass, but they didn't. Like, if Bobby was the pervert god, right? If there was such a character like that would have been a better way, as opposed to just this foreigner that's just traveling across Japan. Basically, he's like this weeaboo. That's basically what he is. He's a weeb.
Exactly. No, like, one of the reasons why I found myself so frustrated with him, honestly, is like, it just reinforces all of the bad stereotypes that people have about, like, I think that, if I were to show this show to a friend who doesn't watch anime, at least for Momo, I could be like, haha, this is just the show being weird, weird Japanese shows, am I right? But Bobby is such a stereotype that, it would just make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Whereas Momo, his thing with like BDSM or whatever, like, it's so ridiculous that you can just laugh at it. Right? You're just like, what the fuck?
The thing is, even with Momo, I do feel uncomfortable, because it's like, once again, if I was to show someone who isn't really into anime and I showed them this show and I showed them scenes with Momo, they'll be like, what the fuck is this? Like, that's another thing. Like, there's a lot of things in this show that, because they're trying to go and run for that stereotype, it kind of backfires. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. And I don't think, I think those kind of jokes were tailored to a Japanese audience. I don't know what their humor is like.
Definitely.
But as a Westerner, it just doesn't seem right.
it makes you kind of like, even if you're used to anime, like even
Makes
then
me cringe.
it can make you uncomfortable. And yeah, there you go. It makes you cringe. And honestly, I think that the way that they should have done it, maybe, all right. This is more so a comment on the manga, because as far as I'm aware, you know, like they did have a lot of time spent on Bubby and Momo in the manga, right? So they couldn't exactly change that. But if, you know, I could kind of redo the manga / the show, the way I would have done it is maybe fit in a third side character, you know, on top of Keita and Ranmaru, into the show, right? Develop them more, or at least, you know, just keep 2 side characters, Ranmaru and Keita, and develop them even more, and then just have Bubby and Momo come in for like 1 or 2 episodes, just like the other gods, you know, like the turtle god and the toilet god. They were characters as well, but they didn't really bother me that much because they show up like for what, maybe 20 minutes in total of screen time, right? If that. It's not that, you know, Bubby and Momo are necessarily bad characters. They were just terrible for what they were used for, right? They overstayed their welcome in the show, is what I think.
I agree, 100%.
You know?
It just feels out of place. As you mentioned, like the only reason that, you know, Bobby was in the episode was to give her the training sword. That's the only reason. Like that could have been another character. He could have been purposed as a god, as a genie, because, you know, he was wearing genie clothes at one point. I was like, oh, cool. Is this a god? Is this a blah, blah? But then it's just the fact that he's a foreigner just traveling Japan just seemed a bit lazy. He just seemed like, oh, we're just going to do this because we have nothing better to do. That's just how I felt.
Yeah.
That's why I would say Momo and Bobby as characters, they're my least favorite.
Yeah, no, same thing. But special shout out though to a character I feel is in the same category. Not quite a side character like Keita and Ranmaru, but still kind of a joke character really, but that is actually done well. Kumagai.
Okay.
You know, like he's fucking, I don't know if you noticed him throughout the show, but he's always like the helpful fucking weird sidekick, right? That's always
He's
with,
Robin.
Momiji.
He's
yeah. No, he is Robin basically, right? And he makes you laugh, right? But you don't notice him when he's not there, right?
Yeah, because he doesn't jump out as, oh, look at me, blah, blah, blah. No, he's very subtle.
He's not annoying.
And the fact that he doesn't speak as well, that adds something to it. It's just the fact that he looks creepy and he has everything written down on a book. It just makes sense. I do feel that a lot of his jokes that were written down, once again, because it is targeted to a Japanese audience, because you're translating that into English, it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
So a lot of the jokes that I found that he has written in his book doesn't make much sense to me. But I mean, that's just how it is, unfortunately.
At least in his role, though, he doesn't feel intrusive like the other two. He complements, like, in a way, he's never there on his own, technically, until like the last episode. He's always there. Whenever he's in a scene, Momiji is also in the scene with him. He's there to complement the comedy, and he's not, you know, just trying to steal the show, unlike the other two. So I feel that, you know, that's an example of a well done comedic side character as opposed to those other two, you know. But yeah, I feel that does a pretty good overview of our side characters. I want to know, what do you think of our 2 main heroines, actually? Right, the entire show is centered around them. So
this might be a hot take, but honestly, if it wasn't for the final arc, I don't think I would have had any favorite characters. I don't think I would have liked Momiji or Sakura. In fact, characters like Ichiko and Momiji would have been classed as least favorite characters for me, just because they started off as unlikable, especially Sakura. Because if you guys know this or you don't know this, I don't like characters who come off thinking as if they are the dog's bollocks. It's one of the reasons why I didn't like Senna in season 1 of Haganai. The fact that she wasn't able or willing, you know, to share her good luck energy made her ugly on the inside. I know, despite her like sexy appearance, she just seemed ugly. She seemed rotten and disgusting human being. Like, I rooted for her to basically, I don't know, it's just I hated her. There was a genuine hate, and I really don't hate characters in anime that much, but her at the beginning, disgusting character. But throughout the show,
I think that's a sign that the show did its job, though, no?
True.
Because you're not supposed to like Ichiko at the beginning. You're not supposed to be like, oh my god, she seems like such a good person. I would love to be friends with her. No, you'd be like, she's a spoiled brat. She's a terrible person, right? What the hell? And then you're supposed to slowly understand why she's the way she is, right? Because of her past and how she's slowly improving, right? So if anything,
I mean, her
that just shows that
improvement throughout the show was incredibly slow, and it was just like,
It
up until
it
11, I was like,
admittedly.
fuck this. Fuck Ichiko. But I mean, throughout the show, we see her slowly get out of her shell. We learn why she's a bitch. I don't understand the reasoning behind it. I get it. Oh, there's this guy she liked in like kindergarten and her friend betrayed her. But to keep a grudge from kindergarten up until, you know, to the point where you're an 18-year-old or 16-year-old or whatever.
But you have to understand, though, at the same time, I'm no child psychologist, right? But like, I don't feel that my childhood had as much, I don't know, like friendship drama in it. Maybe it's different for girls, but like, I don't know, just being betrayed like that when you're a kid, it can't, like, I can see why it would kind of fuck you up later, right? And kind of like skew your view of relationships. And it's not just that, though. If I remember correctly, it was basically just Suano with her entire life, because her, I don't know, her parents died or they abandoned her, or like, I don't know, they're just not there, right? She had no family, she had no siblings. It was just her. Honestly, I can see why she's the way she is. I'm not excusing her behavior, but for me at least, I can understand why she's so, you know, unpleasant in the beginning.
I completely understand, and I've written it down in my notes. I understand why she's a bitch and why she, you know, her being betrayed by a best friend is very difficult to handle. So she kind of distances herself from others to protect herself. I get that. And so she doesn't get hurt again. That's why she finds it very difficult to, you know, accept Ranmaru as a friend and stuff like that. Or even when, you know, the butler was asking, oh, I'm so happy you got a friend, when he's referring to Momiji. There's stuff like that. But at the same time, Kevin, the reason behind it, it felt very tacked on. It felt very lazy. But at the same time, I just want to flip it a little bit. I kind of relate to her because of that, because I was the same when I was a child. Obviously not for the same reasons. I've gone through quite a lot.
You're a rich Japanese girl who would grow up to have a huge rack.
Yeah, well, I still do have a
huge
huge rack, and I feel that I am hated by everyone.
TMI.
So,
Let's edit that shit out. Oh my god, no, my ears.
I'm sorry, Kevin, but regardless, the thing is, right, I understand, because I used to do that. I used to do it with myself. You know, I had friends, not necessarily, it wasn't being betrayed by friends, it was more so, you know, my dad dying, and he was like my only friend, so I felt that I have to distance myself so I don't lose friends that I gain, if that makes sense. So I kind of understand that whole putting yourself around the bubble to protect yourself, not interacting with people, being a hikikomori, because technically she is this odd type of hikikomori. She doesn't really interact with others.
Yeah, she goes to school and stuff, but like other than that, she just goes straight home and does
exactly.
whatever.
So she goes straight home, she does what she needs to do, but she doesn't interact at school. She doesn't have any after school classes.
She doesn't cook either. She doesn't do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she kind of relies on others, you know, whether it's kind of like Senna, you know, when in Haganai, when all the boys came up to Senna, like, oh, Senna, you're so cool in this, and let me do your homework, and let me do this, and let me do that. You know, it's that kind of attitude that she has. And oddly enough, I kind of relate to that as, you know, this odd hikikomori type thing. And when we see characters like Momiji being saved by Sakura for the sake of friendship and not losing her, I was amazed at how much she's grown as a character. And the same character who wouldn't help anyone if it wasn't for her own benefit to herself, went out of her way to do something truly selfless.
Now, my question for you is because you know, you're so frustrated up until the last arc, and I'm assuming that, you know, you didn't love, but you didn't hate the middle episodes either. Did you feel surprised by this character growth? Do you feel that it was a sudden jump out of nowhere, or did you see that development slowly build throughout
I
the
will be
season?
honest with you, I see it slowly build. It was a slow burn, don't get me wrong, but as soon as I watched this anime, I felt that redemption arc was predictable, because you can't have a character, the main protagonist can't be a hated character in a comedy show, otherwise it's just not gonna last. So in my mind, I was waiting for the redemption. I was thinking, when is she gonna do something? And I thought maybe for the Ranmaru we would get a true redemption for her, but it wasn't. It was like, okay, it was something, and it adds to the whole, adding to her kindness as a character and stuff, but we didn't really fully get it until the end of episode 11, episode 12, 13, etc.
Did you feel that it was, I'm not going to say shocked, because, you know, it was headed in that direction, right? You knew that there was going to be a redemption, but my question was more so, like, did you feel that it was cheap? Was it like, oh, Sakura bad, and then all of a sudden she flip-flops and becomes good? or do you think that it was...
By any means, it didn't feel
Okay.
cheap to me. I just felt very happy. I think if I was looking at this outside of this, as you know, as bad as it seems, if I was to watch this maybe 2 years time and I look at the show and I'm like, hey, this was pretty cheap, I could feel myself saying that. But at the time of watching, I was just so fucking fed up with Sakura as a character that when she became good, I was so happy, and I didn't care about it being cheap or anything like that. Because yes, it is inherently cheap. The fact that there is an on and off switch that turned on, and the fact that we didn't see much of this. We only had like 2 episodes of cool Sakura, or you know, the good Sakura. Yeah,
Really?
I mean, yes, there was the build up. You can see it
Really?
happen, Kevin. But at the same time, I was just so fed up with her character that when she was good, I was like, hey, I'm on board, man.
Okay, it's a very slow burn, but I do think that they do a good job at, you know, making her progress bit by bit. You know, like there are a lot of times where like she helps someone and she's kind of like a tsundere and she's like, oh, like make no mistake, I'm not doing this for you. I'm just doing this for my own sake or whatever, to benefit myself, right? But it's because she doesn't want to admit that she's changing. No, I felt that, okay, you might feel that there's a bit of a jump just because like she denies it the entire time and she doesn't really come to terms with it until like literally the last episode, right? Because she still uses that, oh, I'm only doing this for my self benefit, until she talks to Keita in the last episode. But I don't know, I do feel that it's a slow burn, but you do get to see her genuinely grow, you know? I never felt that there was an on-off switch.
I'm not disagreeing that by any means, Kevin. I just felt that it was too slow, especially for a 12 episode anime. Like if this anime was going on for 24 episodes, I don't think I would last.
I can see that. I can take your point for that. Yeah, definitely. It is too slow for such a short 13 episode anime, and like because it's so slow, you're feeling that the change is happening so slowly that her character is practically the same, which for all intents and purposes, it almost is for most of the show. So I have a feeling that, you know, a lot of people, like you said, who are in your situation, would have dropped the show by episode, you know, like 3, 4, maybe, you know, if you get really far, 5, 6, because they just don't like Ichiko, right? You really have to get all the way to the end, honestly, to get to the best part of the show, in my opinion.
Completely agree. Is there any other... I really want to know your opinions on characters like Sakura and Momiji.
I mean, I think I've really said all there is, really, to say on Ichiko, or Sakura. I never really disliked her at the beginning. Just, again, I have my own bias here, but I could definitely see that, you know, she's not supposed to be a character that you like, right? I do think that, yes, the development that they had, again, was slow, but for me, because I didn't dislike the character at the beginning to begin with anyways, and because there are, you know, these golden slapstick moments thrown out here and there throughout the middle episodes, I didn't mind continuing to watch, right? I was there for the ride. I really enjoyed it, but I can definitely see why a lot of people would just give up, because it's so dependent, in my opinion, on Ichiko, whether or not you like Ichiko. It's like a deal breaker, right? Because if you don't like the main character in any show, you're not gonna slog through 9 episodes, right, to do it. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna get into for Good Luck Girl is really the audio-visual aspect of it, you know, because, you know, as with any comedy show, I feel the life or death of it really lies in its aesthetics, right? Whether that's through the voice actors, through the animation and stuff. That's really the lifeblood of a good comedy show. So I really wanted to know what your impressions were, first off, for the art style, right? Just in general.
Oddly enough, when we start our episodes of the podcast, we compare notes, and this area, this section, which has never really happened before, has the most for art style and animation. So to be honest with you, the first thing that punched out to me was the colors. They're very varied, and kind of vibrant at points. Despite this, you know, the characters themselves look a bit flat, without much depth in terms of shading and shadows. And it kind of contributed to why I felt this anime is similar to Gintama. I didn't know that this was done by the same team. I knew it was done by the same studio as Gintama, obviously Studio Sunrise, but I didn't know that this was done by the same team that brought Bleach and Gintama. So it kind of makes sense. And it kind of seemed a bit deliberate for me, as opposed to sheer laziness, because the sceneries don't have the issue as the character's flatness. So if you look at the sceneries closely, they're very detailed, very colorful, and it kind of feels like they've done it to give that apparent lazy feel that like Gintama has, like a more laid back look with the characters. I don't know how to explain it, because if you look at, like, there was a moment when watching the first 3 episodes that popped in my head. Look at the floorboards in Sakura's house, in her apartment. They're incredibly detailed, and I don't understand why that is. It kind of reminds me of World God Only Knows, because that anime also had the same level of detail at the same time. Also, another thing that I wanted to mention was the fact that the anime switches, similar to God Only Knows, it switches between multiple art styles. So it will have a chibi art style when we have the Poverty God item segments.
Oh, those are so good. Yeah.
They're fantastic. And I understand, I would imagine that they would have been taken straight out of a particular manga panel. It just kind of gives me that vibe on it. But the fact that it changes its art style so much, because there's a lot of references.
So many
references, There's references to JoJo's, Doraemon, Sailor Moon, Princess Mononoke, Dragon Ball, Gintama,
Death Note.
There's so many shows.
Honestly, I find that this is perhaps the greatest strength, and also kind of the greatest weakness in a way, because when you have as many references as you do in this show, right? References are it's such a key thing in the laugh out loud slapstick moments, right? Because you're instantly able to tell what they're parodying, not just because, like the clothing or whatever, but the distinctive art style in it, right? I think I even noted over here what fucking killed me in episode 7, all right? When they introduced Ranmaru. Right, and when Ranmaru is walking down the class looking for Sakura, right, and she's like, "Oh fuck, I gotta cover myself, I gotta hide," and she transforms into this like JoJo art style, right, and then Momiji sees that and she's like, "Oh fuck, I gotta do it too," and then suddenly everyone starts like transforming to this completely different fucking ultra detailed art style. It's those sort of moments, right, where they're able to switch art styles just like that at the tip of a hat that makes this show so funny, that makes slapstick so effective. At the same time, I don't know if you'll agree with me here, but I find that it's kind of a shame that the normal art of the show is worse than like the slapstick animation art and stuff.
I completely agree with you, but as I mentioned before, I understand why that's the case. It doesn't seem to be because they're lazy or anything, because they can show that they can do great work, especially in the scenery and in the parody art styles. But yeah, I kind of get it. But another reason why I was disappointed about all the references was because you need to know the references. You need to watch all these anime to get it. Like, there's a lot of references here that I didn't necessarily understand, but at the same time, if you're not an otaku, if you're not a weeb, you're not gonna get it, and that kind of may hurt the show a little bit.
I mean, yes, but I mean, what do you want? That's just inherent risk that you're taking when you're doing a comedy show, right? With so many references, you can't attain those highs if you don't take that risk,
Like, I get it. Like, if you're doing references to Naruto or One Piece or Dragon Ball, like, that shows that I've not seen One Piece, but I can recognize One Piece, right? But when you're doing references to shows like Prince of Tennis or like Samurai Pizza Cats,
how did you not know about Prince of Tennis though? Come on. Like
I didn't know about Prince of Tennis.
That is such an old show. That's such an old show. I'm 20, okay? Hang on, it's not in the 90s, but I think, let me just search this up real quick, be right back. So this was from 99 to, okay, so I was a bit off. I thought it was like early 90s, but still, the manga ran from 99 to 08, all right? Like, that is older. Actually, yeah, it started on July 19th, right? So that is older than me, okay? And I still know about that.
I didn't get it, Kevin. Look,
I don't know how you don't know about it. It is like the OG sports manga / anime.
Look, I didn't get it, but at the same time, it's like Samurai Pizza Cats, really? Like, you're really gonna give like some of them were just too obscure for me. And I understand, Kevin. Okay, Prince of Tennis is a very popular anime, but at the same time, I have to think about the people watching this show for the first time, especially newcomers to anime, and they're watching this and like, what the fuck?
You have to think about it though. We're viewing this from a Western perspective, right? I think that, again, we've already stated that a lot of the jokes, they're tailored for a Japanese audience, right? I think that if you were the mangaka, right, when he created the manga, he wasn't like, oh, what are people gonna think in America or in Canada, right? He's tailoring this for a Japanese audience. And I think that if you're a Japanese person, right, like, even if you're not necessarily super into all of these references or all these shows that are referenced in the jokes, right, just because you're Japanese and you're in Japan, they have so much more exposure to these famous shows, right? I don't feel that they're, referencing really obscure series by any means, right? Those are all things that would easily be recognizable for, you know, an otaku in Japan. I feel like, for me anyways, like I didn't watch JoJo yet, it's on my list, but I didn't even watch Prince of Tennis either, but like even then, I had enough of an idea about what those shows are about to get some sort of appreciation about it.
I don't know if you have any comments on the art style, because there's also a lot of stuff that I have written for the animation, but...
That's basically all I have on the art style, really. Like, it's, you know, we've already covered character design, but when design aside, I see why, you know, they decided to go for a plain sort of design for the characters. But then again, when it comes to like the quality, the amount of detail in the characters themselves, even if you choose a plain design, I feel that you could get into the nitty-gritty details of the characters. But like, it's funny that you mentioned, I think it was you that said the hair was well done, right? I found that it was really you know, just kind of like monocolor, not too much variation. Even the lighting, I don't think there are many instances where
I think the lighting was superb, but you know, that's
well,
my
it's agree
opinion.
to disagree.
Okay. Okay. For me, it's just because the hair was shiny. I just personally like shiny hair. It's not a fetish or anything. I just like shiny hair in anime.
That's kind of like the minimum that you need to have, though, right? Otherwise, it'd just be like super monotone.
But
like,
it works well with the monotone design and the flat colors. That's just why it pops out to me. I noticed that.
When you say monotone design, I think we have different expectations. When you say a monotone design, I'm thinking of like Studio Ghibli, super not monotone or flat in the bad way, but you know, it's very like, it's almost like a pastel or like a watercolor, right? Very light, smooth colors, like Ghibli films or Nichijou would be a perfect example of that. Here, it's kind of like they've got, you know, one foot in the door, but they're not like fully committed to it. The details aren't quite there, but they're scared to add more because, like, you know, they'll be straying away from the original manga's art or something. Like, I don't know, it feels kind of half-assed in a certain sense.
To be honest with you, Kevin, that can be perceived that way. I think the reason why they've done this is so that they can easily transition into the parody designs a lot easier. That's just my personal opinion.
That would make sense, actually. I hadn't thought of that, yeah.
In terms of the animation now, for me, this is where you can see that this is a great animation studio, Studio Sunrise. They've done shows like Love Live, they've done shows like Gundam. They're really, really talented. They've even done Tiger and Bunny. So you can kind of see this. The animation sequences are very smooth, seamless. There was no dropped or missing frames from what I can tell. And you can tell this a lot with the fight sequences.
Yes.
Because the fighting is well detailed, superb, and it's like, I don't know, I get like the Dragon Ball Z like lighting effects and ground shake and stuff like that. You see that in there, and that kind of animation helps to build suspense and create tension, especially within the fight scenes, and that's what you need, and that's an example of great animation work. And I feel that within anime, it kind of feels like it's especially on this podcast, we don't really talk about animation a lot, and I have to say, I genuinely love the animation in this show. You know, for example, some fight scenes happen in open air and they're very fast paced, and it's very reminiscent of other shonen shows, you know, if you're talking about like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, One Piece, stuff like that, even Gintama, right? So there is a lot of stuff, a lot of sort of anime pedigree that is taken from, you know, Studio Sunrise and all the other past amazing works that they've done in terms of shonen anime and action shows that they're bringing into the show that I feel that not many people would notice.
Honestly, overall in the animation, I'd say the same thing about really my points about the art style come back here. It's for the usual stuff, the characters in their day-to-day lives, nothing noteworthy, but when it comes to the fight scenes, the seamless transitions to, you know, the little poverty god item introductions, the parodies of other shows, imitating their fight scenes, their art styles, and it's a very versatile show, and I think they were very lucky to have Sunrise on this, because they show that, you know, hey, we've worked on, you know, shonen like Bleach, we've worked on other comedies like Gintama. They have a very talented ensemble of animators there, and it's really clear in those slapstick scenes.
That's really all I have to say in regards to the animation and the art style. The audio for me wasn't really something to call home about. It was very generic. It wasn't
literally
really
nothing for the
memorable or
OST.
anything like that. It's just, look, there's some things about it that I do say were quite highlights. Like, for example, scenarios and situations where the characters get themselves into romantic moments or sincere moments or silly moments like the tennis showdown. The music was, it was good. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't something...
But you're forgetting one crucial detail, though.
What?
The ode to fan service. You can't say that's not a good piece of art, right? That was a masterpiece, right?
100%. I like that. But I mean, in terms of the audio wasn't the best.
No.
It wasn't like
It was
Golden
adequate.
Time or
I don't feel it was bad, but it's just,
It was mediocre, like the show. Like to be
Oh,
honest
wow.
with you.
Damn.
Oh,
okay.
did I say too much? Oh, no, but it's true. It wasn't anything noteworthy. That's really all I have to say about
Okay,
that.
but I agree with you on the soundtrack, nothing noteworthy. But for me, I'll start with the ending, I guess, because I'll be honest, the opening, it's okay. It wasn't great. I never really took note of it. The opening. But
What?
the ending, I literally, in the amount of times that I've watched the show, I have never skipped the ending because it is just so good. The ending is like the last arc of the show. It combines good animation,
Really?
a nice bit of fan service, a really catchy tune. Like, for me, I loved the ending, honestly. And now I'm assuming you're gonna be like, oh, the ending's shit, the opening's the best.
Exactly. I'm glad you know.
Oh
I
my
don't have to say anything
God.
else about it, but I prefer the opening. The opening gets me hyped
Really?
for the show. Yeah, man.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The opening gets me hyped. I actually listen to the opening on a regular. The ending for me wasn't that hyped. I get what you're saying about the animation sequence. Yeah, great, but the music was a bit lacking.
What? Really?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kevin.
I found it to be, very lighthearted, funny, and also a bit like cockatish in a way. I don't know if music can be cockatish, but like it gives that vibe, it's, I don't know. I felt that it was a really nice end to every episode. I was looking forward to the end because that ending was so good. The opening, honestly, I might have listened to it in its entirety once just to write notes. And then after that, I just skipped it.
All right. Well, I mean, let's agree to disagree, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Do you have... I think we kind of mentioned gripes and grumbles.
Hang on, and we're not quite done yet. Because
Oh, okay.
yes, we've covered the soundtrack, we've covered the opening and ending, but another thing I think would be an injustice, all right, to end this episode without mentioning the voice acting. Specifically for me, I found that Ichiko's VA
Ichiko
really
is a bleach, right?
yeah really did, honestly. She knocked it out of the park because she, it's always tricky to balance drama and comedy. A lot of shows try it. It's really hit or miss a lot of the time, I feel. And a part of that is, how flexible your voice actors are, right? And I feel that the voice actress for Ichiko she embodies her spirit. And we really get the sense of, her really cocky, arrogant attitude. She's really like confident about herself. But at the same time, she's able to really adapt to the more emotional / moody moments in the show, right? Where she's forced to confront, that, hey, I'm alone and I do need the help of these other people around me, right? She really captures all sorts of emotional and funny moments, and I think that without a voice cast like that, the show wouldn't be the same. Just imagine, again, I mentioned for the upteenth time Nichijou here, but like that is a perfect illustration just of how crucial it is to have good voice actors in a comedy show, and I feel that in the case of the main character, at least, it was very well done.
Okay, I mean, I don't have much to say about the voice acting in the show.
Okay, well, fair enough.
Ironically, though, because I've been watching a lot of the dub because I've seen it subbed and dubbed.
Oh boy, okay. If you want to talk about it, yeah, go ahead.
Forgive me for saying this, but I kind of prefer the dub.
Honestly, like maybe it's an acquired taste, but I tried to listen to episode 1 in the dub, right? Like what I did actually was I was really curious when rewatching it for this episode, for this recording, of really doing a play-by-play comparison too, because for those of you who don't know, most of the time we cover exclusively the sub versions of a show, right? Unless I can't remember the last time we covered the dub version.
I think it was Black Lagoon.
Yes, there we go, Black Lagoon, where it would be a sin to not cover the dub, right? Usually we stick with the subs, and if the dub is decent, or we really want to make a comparison, then we usually watch the entire show in sub and then watch a few moments in dub to see how good the dub is, right? But in this case, I really wanted to get a direct comparison between the two versions. And so I watched a scene in the original Japanese, and then I went back and through Funimation and watched it in that same scene in English. And I find that the voice actors in the Japanese version, they're able, I don't know, I guess scream a bit more. They're able to do that over the top, surprise, shocked voice
It's
lot
weird.
better.
Like, I completely understand where you're coming from, but the reason why I prefer the English dub, and I'm sorry to cut in, is because of the male characters, not so much of the female characters. I prefer the male characters in the English dub. You know, you've got amazing voice actors from Funimation, such as Clifford Chapin or Patrick Seitz, and these are people that have voiced like characters like Bakugo in MHA or Endeavor, and you get like a very powerful voice from it. You even have the voice actor for Haru in Free voices Momo. So it's like stuff like that. The voices are a lot better in English for the male characters as opposed to the female characters. I feel that, yes, the Japanese voice actor for characters like Ranmaru and Ichigo and Momiji in general, they have an excellent voice range and they can switch between all the different pitches and emotions quite quickly because the show really depends on that and it strengthens the show quite a lot. But I just don't know. I just feel that the English is hitting me a lot more, if that makes sense. It might be because of, as I mentioned, I haven't been watching many subbed anime during quarantine because I don't want to forget how to speak English. So that might be why, and there might be a little bit of a bias there because I didn't mention it in my note, but upon the rewatch, that's just how I feel, Kevin. Maybe if I watched it again a couple months' time, I'll be like, Bish, what the fuck were you trying to say? Like, do you know, I might regret saying that. I
think that wraps it up quite nicely, and I think it'd be really nice to close it off with the usual second season / would you recommend it here, because especially if you blinked, then you might have missed it. But for those of you who watched episode 13 all the way until at the very end, they did this fourth wall breaking joke of a preview for a future season.
That's interesting, Kevin, because I have a lot to say about this and I really want to go first. So
go for it.
Looking at that, initially I didn't want to see a second season. I felt the show was wrapped up. I was like, you know what, this is done, no problem. But that little teaser at the end, I know it's fake, I know it was a joke, but I don't know. Like, I really do want to see a second season. The anime it's kind of self-contained, but that little teaser felt like they wanted to do a second season. I don't know why.
I think I know why. Because honestly, we both agree, and I think I'd go as far as to say that it's an objective fact that the last arc is the best part of the show, right? And just have the show end so strong to tease that alternate Momiji, right? And just the great moments that were in that last arc and have that towards the end of the show, it just leaves you wanting more because it teases you, right? You see all of this great comedy, all this wrapped up super nice, and you're like, oh my god, if they could have this caliber of arc for like in the entire second season, it would be amazing, right?
Exactly. I kind of feel like they wanted to do something like that. And obviously, I don't know if it's because of source material that they couldn't do it, or because obviously I found that a lot of Sunrise shows don't go past first season. They don't go on to second season. We've seen this in the case of Excel World, in the case of Tiger and Bunny. By the way, Tiger and Bunny's getting a second season.
Really?
I don't know. I just want to go a little bit off topic here. Tiger and Bunny is getting a second season. I saw it on Twitter the other day. Officially, Studio Sunrise announced officially, Kevin.
It's been 84 years. Oh my god.
It's been 84 years. Anyway, back onto the point. So I find that looking at that end, of the anime, wanting more, and then seeing that teaser makes me feel like, hell yeah, I want to see a second season. Because if they did make a second season of the show, they showed stuff that was basically within that teaser. Fuck yeah, man. That would have been amazing.
I see what you mean. And I do want, okay, I gotta word myself.
I mean, I know it's not going to happen. 100%.
We both know it's not going to happen. It's a done deal. It's an 8-year-old show, and the manga's done anyways, right? I think they covered the entire run.
Although, Tiger and Bunny, after how many years, Tiger and Bunny's getting a second season.
Don't do that. Don't give me hope.
There's hope. There's hope. There is hope, Kevin.
As much as I enjoy this show, right? As much as I love it, they just... that last arc is so good. They wrapped up all the loose ends. The character arc was, finished. It was such a nice knot. It'd be a shame to undo that knot, just to throw other stuff in that doesn't feel natural, right? I think that what I want is not necessarily a second season, because that wouldn't make sense from a plot standpoint. What I really want is more of this caliber of comedy and more of the same characters. So I mean, I guess if I could have what I want, right, it would be more like maybe a spin-off where it's like, I don't know, Momiji's shenanigans before coming down to Earth. Or, maybe a prequel or something, right? Where you get to see the same sort of style, the same sort of like silliness and wackiness with all those references, that same style of comedy, but before, just because anything afterwards would not make sense at all for the character development, to be honest. Or maybe just an OVA, it's not gonna happen either, but just an OVA would be friggin' amazing.
I kind of feel where you're coming from in terms of a prequel, because there's a lot you can do with Momiji. There's a lot you can do with these side characters. Like, we've had the gods. We haven't seen them interact that much. I want to see, what's the story behind Turtle Guy, or how they interact with and I know it sounds really stupid, but even Momiji's boss, there's a lot of mystery behind her. We haven't really spoken about her, but I want to know what's her importance to the whole story. And I feel that if there was a prequel show around 12 episodes as well, we could find a lot about it, and it could explain a lot what's going on in the show. Whether or not it's more likely to happen, but still, it would be nice to see.
We can dream,
Dreams can become memes, I guess.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. In terms of recommending the show, I think you might have a different opinion, but I'll say mine first. I would recommend this show to seasonal anime veterans. And the reason why I say that is
seasonal anime veterans. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean like people that are seasoned anime veterans, like people that are watching
covered in
anime.
Sauce. Oh, okay.
Yes, exactly.
Funny joke.
Anyway, so there's a lot of insane references to other jokes, tropes, and I feel that people that are new to anime may not get it.
Oh, no, not at all.
And people that are like new to anime in general, when they see characters like Bobby or when they see characters like Momo, it's something, it comes on a bit too strong. So
it would scare, this shit would scare you away, honestly, from shows. You'd be like, what the fuck is this weird shit?
Exactly. It's not for everyone.
That's like introducing someone to anime with panty and stocking. You would never do that.
Exactly. So I feel that you would need to watch a couple of anime before, maybe watch 10 various animes, and then come back to watch this, and then you'll appreciate a lot of the jokes, a lot of the archetypes, a lot of the humor in this anime. And I think if it wasn't for this, I would kind of be recommending the show for those who are new, because it's got a lot of potential. It's got the building blocks to be an amazing show. Initially, I told you that I didn't really want to watch this show, and I felt that I was going to drop it, but because of its final arc, I feel like I didn't waste my time. I felt like watching the show, I was very eager to kind of rewatch it and kind of binge it because of the final arc. I know it sounds really stupid, but bear in mind we watched the show multiple times. At least I watched the show multiple times on Kunai, but there is something about it. It's worthwhile because of those last 3 episodes. So if you're someone that has seen a lot of anime, watch this anime specifically for its ending. That's just it.
Where I will disagree with you a little bit.
Okay.
Right, is you say that, if it weren't for the references and stuff that you wouldn't get, and like the Bobby being a pervert and stuff, I don't know whether it would be a good fit for casual viewers even without that, just because, again, for me, I didn't mind it because I was a fan of Ichiko, right? But like you clearly didn't like her, and I think a lot of people would be kind of like, would shy away from the show just because like she's a very divisive character, right? You're not supposed to like her. And the middle episodes, they have great comedic moments, but it's a lot of the same. There's not the progression, again, as we stated earlier, is very slow, right? So if you're a casual viewer, you probably aren't interested in toughing it out for 9 episodes of more of the same with a character that you don't necessarily like, surrounded by a cast of characters that are, for the most part, very flat and two-dimensional. Like Momiji. Sorry, not Momiji, but like Bubby and Momo. But I do agree that, yeah, it's more so it's a very meta show. It's very self-aware. It literally breaks the fourth wall multiple times throughout its 13 episode run. It's very self-aware, and you have to be one of us to understand the references and stuff, right? And even you didn't get all of the references, and I didn't either, right? So it's very much a meta show for people who, I wouldn't say seasonal viewers who watch lots of shows, but just, as long as you have a good grasp of, the really big shows like One Piece, Dragon Ball, Naruto and stuff, and just, I guess, the classics, the big names, in that case, it's definitely a recommend. But other than that, I can't say that it's a show that some casual viewer would enjoy, or that I'd introduce to someone who's just started not long ago. It's a very niche audience, I feel.
I completely agree. I think that's a great place to end this episode of the podcast. Remember, if you really want to suggest an anime for us to watch, you can do that on our Twitter page at Get Alive Podcast. Additionally, we also have a Discord page which you guys can check out, and our Discord, there will be a link in the description, but if you go to getalivepodcast.com/Discord and you can get in. We have discussion channels for anime, for gaming. We also have a Not Safe for Work channel if you're into that as well. We've got everything. In addition to that, I just wanted to announce the next episode. I'm not going to actually say what the episode is, but there will be a surprise for our next episode. I can't say what it is now, but I'm sure you guys are going to look, you're going to like it. You're going to look forward to it. That's it. With that being said, big thanks to our sponsors, Crunchyroll, Japan Crate, and J-List. Bye, guys.
See ya.